I remember having this moment when everything was going really badly. I was like looking around, I was like, well, this is a disaster. Like, who's going to fix this? Who's in charge here? And I'm like, wait a minute, I'm in charge. I need to fix this. And I think that was like a moment where I really kind of like toughened up and was like, okay, I got to figure this out.
Welcome to Leap Forward, a show about founders and the people who believed in them before anyone else. I'm David Rosenko, and on today's show, we talk to Trip Adler. Trip is the founder of Created by Humans, a platform where people can get paid when AI uses their work. Before that, Trip started several companies, most notably Scribd, which is like a Netflix for books, where you pay a monthly fee to access a massive library of documents. Trip grew Scribd through lots of twists and turns to over $300 million of revenue. Now, every founder story has ups and downs, but Trip's were especially extreme. We're talking instant success and huge growth until just a few years later, the company hit a wall and half the team left. So how do you know if you should push harder, pivot, or quit? To find out, I also talked to Trip's dad, John Adler. What's your perspective on how long and how hard you should keep going?
Isn't that the most important question an entrepreneur has to ask themselves?
And now, Trip Adler. Yeah, I'd love if you could just take us back. What was your childhood like? Where'd you grow up and what were you like as a kid?
I had a lot of exposure to companies growing up. I mean, I grew up in Silicon Valley, specifically Stanford campus. You know, a lot of my friends' parents were founders or executives or investors. You know, one really funny story is my childhood babysitters were Susan and Ann Wojcinski from, YouTube and 23andMe. So I was just, really exposed to Silicon Valley a lot. And then my dad was an entrepreneur.
I'm John Adler. Notably, I'm a professor of neurosurgery at Stanford, and I'm also currently CEO of Zap Surgical. And lastly, and perhaps most importantly, I'm Trip Adler's father.
My dad was a brain surgeon turned entrepreneur. So I remember the brain surgery job a lot more. I mean, it's easier for a kid to understand what a brain surgeon does and what an entrepreneur does, right? I don't remember consciously that much what entrepreneurs were doing, but I just remember it seemed like it was interesting and cool. And, my good friend growing up, his family was the family behind Atari. So we would get to play with Atari games before they were on the market. So, I remember those kinds of things. It's pretty cool to be able to play video games before everyone else can play them, right? So I think those are the things as a kid that I noticed about technology and entrepreneurship.
So I remember one of my earlier memories, I remember being 10 or 11. So I was still young enough to sit on a jungle gym. And I remember being at the top of a jungle gym and thinking to myself that I was going to start a business building PCs from scratch to make money. I don't know if you, did you ever have a moment like that where you had these dreams of starting a company?
Not super consciously. I remember somebody asked me what I wanted to do, and I said I wanted to start and run a business. I think it wasn't really until my early 20s that I really figured out that's what I want to do.
Do you remember when he was a little kid? Do you remember what he said he wanted to be when he grew up?
Hell no. No, I didn't know what he was going to do. So, no, I don't know. I just was hoping he'd be employed.
But I was a really good student. I mean, I did really well in school and ended up going to Harvard. And once I went to college, I was I thought I was going to be a doctor. Then I thought I was going to be an investment banker.
In his graduating class from college, a lot of the technology-minded students at the time were all pivoting towards finance. They were going to New York and trying to become investment bankers, which I think for many technically minded people is a waste of a lifetime. But he was bit by the bug, and so between his junior and senior year, he went to work in New York City for Bank of America as an intern, and he hated it. It was one of the happiest things I've ever heard in my life. But then I said, what the hell are you going to do? Otherwise, you're unemployable. And finally got bit by the entrepreneur bug.
Yeah. So I was at Harvard and I saw a sign on the wall for the Harvard Entrepreneurial Contest. And I just had this idea. It was kind of like Uber. And I submitted the idea to the contest and ended up being a finalist. And that kind of just got me going.
Was it a goal of yours back then to start a company? Or was it literally just that was the moment when you saw the sign?
No, I think it was percolating for a while. I mean, I was at Harvard in the same class as Mark Zuckerberg, and he launched Facebook in our class. So I watched his journey. I mean, to give you a sense, my freshman roommate was Facebook user number 4. He was like in the first group that got emailed about Facebook. So I watched, Zuck building Facebook. And then, maybe this sign for the Harvard Entrepreneurial Contest was just sort of like the next signal. So I think it was like a lot of things kind of building on top of each other.
And how'd you meet your co-founder?
Yeah, so I had this idea, and then I was like, I needed a co-founder. So I emailed the entire Harvard computer science list and just said, I have an idea for a company. It's going to be bigger than Google. Who wants to work together? And I actually got a ton of responses. I got like 20 responses. But one of them, the person just responded, but he responded with like a 20-page analysis of the idea. And that person was Jared Friedman, who became my co-founder, who's now partner at Y Combinator. And then we just started talking startups. And I remember we would meet up in like the Harvard dining halls like once or twice a week and just talk startups. And we just kind of got going working together.
Did you get any responses to that email, like kind of stop spamming me or any kind of interesting responses?
I remember there's a lot of interest. Like, I remember it being a very positive response. But Jared was the only one who like really sort of like took the ideas further and challenged the ideas. So we just started kind of like getting along on that level.
Was this after Facebook had really started taking off, and so a lot of people started getting interest?
It might have been related to Facebook because that had a lot of like buzz at Harvard at the time, especially in the whole computer science department. But yeah, so Mark launched that when we were sophomores. And then I sent that email out when I was a senior. So a couple of years later.
And so you first had this idea that was kind of an Uber idea. And I know you went through a few different ideas, but tell me the story of the Scribd idea.
Yeah, so I met Jared, and then what Jared said to me was that he wanted to start a company, but he was only going to do it if we applied to Y Combinator. And I was like, oh well, I looked it up, and it described it as like a program. And I was like, Jared, I don't want to start a company in a program. Like, I just want to start a company. But he said he would only work with me if he did Y Combinator. So I was like, okay, fine, we'll apply to Y Combinator. So we applied in that was spring of 2006. So this was the second year of Y Combinator, and we got invited out to interview with Paul Graham. And yeah, we applied with our idea. It was kind of like this, like at this point, like a transportation super app. It was going to be like a little bit of Uber and a little bit of like, Google Maps for transportation, kind of all combined together. And we pitched the idea to Paul Graham, and then Paul's just like, yeah, that's a really bad idea. Do you guys have any other ideas? And there's another idea that I come up with like a week before, which is basically do like a Craigslist type of model, but for colleges. So we pitched that to PG, and PG's just said, that's an amazing idea. I'll fund that idea. So we basically just pivoted right then. We called it Who List for Harvard University List, and we launched it at Harvard. We had like some moderate success, but nothing really. And then from there, we just started pivoting, and we just started trying like one idea after another. Probably spent like a year in just kind of like rapid pivot mode. And then eventually landed on Scribd, and then it kind of went from there.
Tripp and I had a series of discussions when he was at Harvard, and he kind of wanted to do a startup of some sort, and I don't think he really knew what it was going to be about. And while we were driving back and forth, we like to surf on the coast, we had a discussion about solving my own problem, which was to make medical communication more seamless and effortless. And he took another pivot to the idea that they would now allow people to share documents anywhere. And that became the heartbeat of Scribd then for a long time.
Yeah, so the original tagline was put your docs online. We would just allow anyone to take a PDF, a Word doc, a PowerPoint, upload it to the web. We would embed it in a web page using Flash. And then, we would get an audience for that. So people would land on it through SEO, or, we had a homepage. People could like vote the top documents up and down, kind of like Reddit style. But yeah, that was the initial idea. Just take a document, upload it to the web, and let the world see it. At the time, like YouTube had launched, shortly before then. I mean, it was launched and acquired by Google shortly before then. We described it often as like YouTube for documents, just a way to like, share your documents with the world. So it had some like YouTube-like growth dynamics, which I think helped it get started.
Scribd in its early days was in my living room. Tripp and his buddies, they would poach off our Wi-Fi, and there was never any Coke in the refrigerator because they were drinking it like nonstop. And big challenge was to supply the troops with enough chips or whatever they were eating. Where were they living? I don't even know. Like, Tripp was living at home at that time. Where was Jared? I don't know where they were living. It was a quintessential, young kid startup.
And we had a really momentous launch. We got like a lot of traction. I mean, at the time, like we had probably one of the first good stories of like an app launching and just getting a lot of traction on day one, because we just got a huge number of traffic coming in. And then that really quickly started a viral loop where like the traffic would come in, some of that would upload their own content. Those uploaders would then bring in more traffic, and we got this viral loop going. So it was like pretty clear just from like this momentous start that we were onto something.
So I remember that super clearly because we were in YC the batch after you. We had just moved to the Y scraper. And I remember everyone was talking about you guys, about your crazy viral loop, about growth just absolutely taking off. And I remember going up to your apartment and I think you're showing me some graphs of like things that were really working. Tell me a little bit about kind of how it felt to have really hit this viral loop.
Yeah, it was really like life-changing moment, right? Because we went from having no investors want to talk to us. I mean, I remember we got introduced to a bunch of the top VCs, like, Sequoia and all those guys, and no one would even like take a meeting with us, right? They're just like, oh, this idea is just not an interesting idea. And now all of a sudden, like, I had my phone number on the website, and my phone was just like ringing every hour with like an investor trying to invest in the company. So it was a very like just big shift to go from like nobody caring about what you're doing to everyone caring about what you're doing. And since we were young, I was only like, I don't know, 21 or 20 or 22 or something. I was pretty young. Like that's just a big change. So yeah, it was a big shift. And then from there, we were like raising millions of dollars, hiring a team, and all that kind of stuff.
Do you ever remember the first moment when you looked at the graphs and you just kind of knew that things were working, kind of like that holy shit moment? Was it right after launch or when was that moment that you could really see everything was working?
Well, I think there was a little bit of a moment before launch because like we noticed that we had like worked really hard to get a few like 100 documents on the site before we launched, and we noticed that the average document was getting one visitor per day from Google. And we're just like, well, if we're already getting 100 visitors a day, we haven't launched yet. What if we had like a million documents or 100 million documents? Then when we launched, we just had so much traffic and attention that it just was pretty obvious it was working.
Just looked like the entrepreneurial dream come true. After about half a year, he was moving to an office in San Francisco, and these offices had all the kind of cool, funky things. They were, racing go-karts around the office building, had zip lines and crazy zany stuff that was going on among young 20-year-old startups in San Francisco at the time. And I just thought it looked like great fun, and he was hitting it out of the park and having great fun while doing it, surrounded by good people. So I was, if anything, jealous of Trip's success. Not that I wished him all the great success in the world, but I just never had anything like that. Interestingly, eventually, the hens came home to roost because those early years, which were magical and a lot of fun, eventually led to some difficult times. So I guess you always got to pay the piper in the end. No matter what your startup, everyone in startup life is going to face some hard times, even if it seems magical for part of your journey.
I mean, eventually, that first trick kind of stopped working. We had to reinvent the company multiple times.
I remember when we were kind of struggling at Weebly and I wanted to get your advice. So we went to lunch and you're like, hey, tell me what's going on, man. Seems like, things aren't going that well. And I broke it down for you. And, we were struggling with less growth than we were hoping for. And you told me, well, dude, things aren't that bad. Like, let me tell you the story about this moment we went through. So I'd love to kind of break into that. I remember you told me at one point revenue had kind of slowed. Kind of tell us that story.
Tell the bad parts, the tough parts. Yeah.
We'll be right back. And now, back to the episode. There's a part in the middle where everyone kind of struggles a lot of times.
Yeah. I think probably like the toughest moment for me. So the first few years we had kind of really good, just sort of like organic growth. We had no trouble raising money and all that. We were in the press a lot. We had like a lot of attention for what we were doing. And I think I was so much in that mode of launching new products that I thought like the answer to get to next level just was to launch something new. So we launched like a pretty new product under a new brand called Float. It was meant to be sort of like, connected to Scribd, a little different. We put like way too much resources on it. We executed poorly. The product like totally flopped. That, led to just like a morale crisis in the company. I remember like half the team quitting in like a pretty short period of time. It was like 6 months, like half the team turned over, which is, very heartbreaking to see that many people
That's
just
crazy.
quit your company in a short period of time. So I think that was really tough time.
And so kind of you had this product launch that didn't go so well, like half the company turned over. I mean, what was that experience like? I know for, as a CEO, a lot of times you feel like the whole company rests on your shoulders.
Yeah, well, I remember having this moment when everything was going really badly, and I was like looking around. I was like, well, this is a disaster. Like, who's going to fix this? Who's in charge here? And I'm like, wait a minute, I'm in charge. I need to fix this. And I think there was like a moment where I really kind of like toughened up and I was like, okay, I got to figure this out.
Being a CEO is not a fun, cushy job. It's, especially when you don't have anybody to kind of shoulder to cry on. I don't think Trip shared all the tough times with me. I think we tend to, me too, I protect my own parents. And we all know that if you're going to do a startup, there's going to be a lot of tough times, a lot of suffering. But Trip and I, we did kind of consult each other. He consulted with me a lot as I tried to counsel him through a difficult situation. So Trip and I, we did talk about the challenges he was facing. And I hope I gave him some good advice along the way. If anything, you just need a shoulder to cry on sometime. And so I served that function a little bit. It is true, I think the higher you go, there's fewer shoulders available to you to cry on. And so at that point, he had his father.
I mean, a lot of people go through that kind of thing and give up. And certainly it's intensely stressful. What do you think kind of got you through that, that perspective of like, I'm going to fix it versus, I want to give up?
I don't. I mean, I don't know. I just think I'm just kind of wired that way. I just don't really give up on really kind of anything. I think I've been wired that way for most of my life. Just I'm kind of wired to keep sticking with things and just really determined to stick things out and see them succeed. But I think the way we responded to that was we just sort of like got back to the core business. We just started like focusing on the business model, on profitability, and then we realized the subscription model was really like the best thing working for us. So that's when we started talking to book publishers and we pioneered the subscription model for books. And then we made it so you can, for $9.99 a month, you can get unlimited books with your Scribd membership. And I think that was kind of like maybe the second major moment when the company was reinvented, which kind of took revenue and profitability and took it as a business up to the next level. And subscriptions just sort of like took off very easily. And it just sort of grew organically over time.
I remember talking to you around then too, and your growth was rapidly accelerating. You're growing the team. I mean, I'd love to hear a little bit more about what that was like.
Yeah, so I think we got to a point, maybe around like 2015 or so. I think things were going pretty well in that we had this whole like organic growth funnel built out with the document side of the business. We had the subscription side built out with like having all these book deals. We kind of connected these two things together really well. So, I think growth those years was probably growing like 50% per year or so, which is pretty good because we're at pretty big scale at that point. We're probably like pushing up 100 million in revenue. We tend to operate around break even. We're like little profitable, maybe some years a little less profitable, but just do it around break even is a good way to think about it. And yeah, we just kind of kept building the business. At that point, it was probably like some of the easier years. We kept adding new books. We kept adding new content types, like launching things like audiobooks. We started going directly to authors and building out an original content business. But overall, I think we did a pretty good job and, got the company above 200 million in revenue, highly profitable with kind of like steady growth curve behind it. Those years, I think a lot of the trouble those years was probably like putting in like a management layers in the company and, getting it kind of operating as a real kind of scale company. So I made a lot of mistakes in terms of just like, getting the right managers in place and getting the culture ready to operate at that kind of like higher level of scale.
How did it feel to be back on the rocket ship personally? Like after you had a couple, a tough couple years and all of a sudden, some people left, but you stuck around. Like what was that, what's that feeling like?
I mean, it felt good, but like the nature of my personality is I just move on to the next thing pretty quick. As soon as I get a win, I'm already on to building the next thing. So yeah, I mean, it obviously feels great whenever you have a win, but I'm one of those people who's just always kind of pushing for the next level, and I'm always kind of as I work, I'm living in the future and trying to get to that next step.
And yeah, you said it was 17 years all in?
17 years at Scribd. Yeah, that was like half my life at the time.
17 years. I mean, I know for me personally, 10 years felt like a long time, and then ended up being at Weebly for 14 years all in. How did you know? I mean, did you start thinking like, I may be ready to go do something else? Like, how did you decide to move on?
Yeah, I mean, I think over time, there's always this thought of like, well, I could start this idea. I could start, I had a perfectly built plan for Uber. I was just like 5 years too early. So there's a lot of good ideas I was always thinking about. But in general, I was always pretty excited about what we're doing at Scribd, and we're always working on new, novel things. So it never, even though it was one job for 17 years, it really felt like a new job every few months. So I think it was overall just a really good, rewarding learning experience.
So I think, there's an interesting parallel. I think both you and your dad were at your companies for a really long time, over 17 years. Do you think there's any kind of parallels there with both you sticking through something for a really long time?
Oh, I think we're both the kinds of people who like build things and stick things out. He's now started a total of 3 companies, one that went public, one that sold, one that's kind of still going. And yeah, I mean, he sticks them out for a long period of time. So I probably get it from him. So if you're wondering where I get it from, you should probably ask him because I probably got it from him.
Well, I think he has, if I do say so, some of me in him. He's a pretty focused person and has the capacity to stay on task for a long period of time, hammering away to win. I think he's clearly ambitious. He's quite reticent to show that ambition to the family, but it's clear as day that he is.
I just go for things. I stick with it. I think I've been that way my whole life. I was like that with Scribd. I'm sure I'll be like that with my companies going forward.
Yeah, I guess that's a good segue. You're starting a new company. Can you tell us about your new company?
Yeah, so recently started Created by Humans. We are a startup that is aiming to solve how copyright and AI work together. This has been a really complex issue. A lot of people are grappling with it, and we thought that we could jump in as a startup and help make a difference.
So, how'd you come up with the idea?
So what we're doing is we are building a marketplace for AI rights. So the way we can solve this copyright problem is we basically clear the rights for a large number of works and just make it really easy for AI companies to access the copyright works they need for AI purposes. And we're starting specifically with books here. We want to solve this for books, and then we're going to expand to other kinds of content. And I came up with the idea because I had from my last company all these contacts in the book industry and the AI industry, and I saw everybody suing each other and fighting, and I just really wanted to solve this problem. So, we're building a marketplace, and we're just trying to make AI licensing plug and play for everyone involved. So, authors they sign up, they verify their identity just to make sure we know we're dealing with a real author. They then select the books they want to license. They select the different AI rights they want to license. They sign a licensing agreement, which licenses the books to Created by Humans, and then we can then in turn go out and strike deals where we license these books out to AI companies, and we just make it plug and play for AI companies where they can just sign up, get the data they need, pay for it really easily, and we get that money back to authors. We handle all the complexity around that. So yeah, I just felt like it's something I had to do. So I jumped in and been working on it. It's been going great.
Yeah, tell us a little bit more how it's been going so far.
Starting a new company as a second time founder is it's actually a pretty enjoyable experience. It's also just a lot easier to get started these days. There's just so much more infrastructure for getting a company going that yeah, I got started about a year ago and just really kind of got going really fast. We've raised about $12 million to date, team of about 10 full-time employees. We've got a live product with authors signing up and licensing their works, and that's growing really nicely. We've got a number of AI deals in the works. So yeah, we just have really great momentum, and it's been just a great start and a fun experience.
So, you mentioned it's your, the second time. What's changed for you the second time around?
Yeah, I mean, after 17 years, I had this new vision, and it was just like Scribd wasn't the place to do it anymore. And now I'm just doing it as a new company, and I think there's pros and cons doing it as a new company. It's a little sad to not have the scale of having like a billion annual users and all that kind of stuff, but there's a lot of benefits of starting from scratch. I'm really enjoying having the clean slate, and just having like the creative reset is really nice because when you're running one company for a long time, there's just a lot of constraints in place that are really kind of hard to let go of. And when you can start from scratch, I mean, you just have a full blank sheet of paper to work with. And yeah, there's times to build something for a long time, there's times to start over.
So, I mean, I can only speak from personal experience. I know you kind of roll off one company. There's for sure this real decompression moment where you have to catch your breath and kind of recover in a lot of ways. How was that for you? And when did you know it was the right time for you to start another company, or did you just roll right into the second one?
Yeah, I rolled pretty quickly. I was out of Scribd, and I couldn't get this idea out of my head. So I went right into it. So I really only took about 2 months off, and I think it was the right call. I mean, Paul Graham was really trying to get me to take a longer break, but I was just ready to go.
That's awesome. So you said 17 years, this might be the start of another 17-year journey. I mean, paint the picture for me. If everything goes amazing in 17 years, what does Created by Humans look like?
Well, I hope that this whole issue of copyright and AI is solved. I think that it won't be such a contentious issue, and I think we'll play a key role in solving it. I mean, even bigger than that. I mean, our mission is to protect and preserve human creativity in the AI era and make it thrive in the AI era. And I think like hopefully we're achieving that mission. Yeah, I mean, there's like a lot of big questions with AI right now of like, what are humans going to do? Will humans be creative? Will AI just do all the creative work for us? And I mean, we're kind of horrified by that future. We want to make sure that humans still are creating things. and we want to create a business model that perpetuates human creativity. So I saw this huge problem, and I felt like I was kind of the right person to solve it.
He's caught between tectonic plates here, human creators making the essence of humanity and AI bots just trying to suck it all up and trying to replace the humans. So it's a tectonic battle, and I hope he's the winner in it. But I have to admit, the forces that he's dealing with are as large as they get in the world today. And even we never talked ever really about how he was going to succeed. He did that out of sheer ambition. So no one kicked his ass to do it. He just wanted to do it. I think he wanted to win.
This podcast is brought to you by Leap Forward Ventures, an investor in early stage startups. If you like the show, the number one thing you'll want to do is sign up to get notified when we release new episodes that includes transcripts and key takeaways from each story. Head to leapforward.fm to sign up. I'd also love to hear your feedback on the episode and who you want to hear from next. Just shoot us a text at 415-915-3050 to get in touch. This episode was produced by Theo Balcom and Kim Naderfane-Petersa. Craig Ellie is our engineer. Reese Lodano made our cover art. Music is by Jim Brunberg and Ben Landsverk of Wonderly. I'm David Rosenko, and this is the Leap Forward podcast. See you next episode.